In this video, we're going to look at the Kotlin Analysis API. We're going to look at a construct called a session, which is the entry point for analysis. This is part of a video series that breaks down different pieces of the API. So let's start by looking at a high-level overview of the different phases in the Kotlin compiler. So the Kotlin compiler takes your source code, and the first thing that it does is that it constructs a syntax tree called PSI. Each node in this tree represents an element in your source, but what's missing in this tree is semantic information. This is added in the analysis phase. And semantic information includes things such as, the type information, where this is where type inference is done. So the analysis API was improved in the K2 compiler, and it allows us to scale the analysis API to be able to do Kotlin to Swift export. And we're going to look at examples of how this works in this video. So what information does analysis give us? The information that it gives us are things such as reference targets, expression types, scopes. So the analysis API takes into account global scopes, local scopes. It also allows us to get errors with diagnostics and warnings. So this analysis API in the K2 compiler is behind all of these IntelliJ features that you use every day: code completion, refactoring, and inspections. So let's start with a very basic example and look at how would we go about analyzing this source code. This is a very simple example of an abstract class and an implementation of it, and I'm overriding a protected method called check. So the first thing that we have to do is to build a PSI tree. And what does that look like? So when you look at the PSI tree, this is what it looks like. At the root is always a KT file. All the elements are prefixed with KT. And what I could do is grab one of these elements and provide it to the analysis API. Suppose I were to look at this tree and I were to take the root element, which is KT file, and provide that to the analysis API. What the analysis API will give me when I give this element to it is that now I'm going to be able to have access to different extensions that the analysis API gives me. And it's going to give me a specific result that I could gather. So what does this look like? Let's look at this. So the analysis API, the way it's designed is that I have PSI elements, and it's providing me with extensions. It's built on top of the PSI. It's providing me extensions on the elements. So suppose I have an element type, a root type. For example, in this case, I'm using KT file, but it could be KT decoration if you want. And what I could do is provide it to this analyze method. This analyze method is how analysis is done. Inside of this lambda block, which is called an action, I have access to extensions such as symbol. I want to grab a symbol, I could do that. So there, I could also do diagnostics in there. I could get types in there also that we'll look at. This is a very, very basic example of how analysis is done with this analyze method. So when you look at the source of this analyze method, it looks like this right there. It has parameters and it's creating something called a KA session for me. So let's look at each of the different pieces of this analyze method. The first parameter in this analyze method is where I could provide a particular KT element. It could be a declaration, expression. It could also be a module that contains many declarations. The second thing that this analyze method has is an action. So as I said, it could be a module which has KT declarations that I could provide to this analyze method. So it doesn't have to be just one KT element, for example. Usually you have a module that you're providing to this analyze method. So the next thing that it has, which is very, very important, is this action type. KA session is the entry point of analysis. It builds a KA session for me. That's what that provider is doing there. And inside of this action is where I could access different extensions that the analysis API gives me. So the next thing we're going to look at is what this KA session is. This KA session is comprised of different providers. It gives me information about the type information, symbol information, and it's also comprised of checkers. So underneath the hood, this KA session is just an interface, and it has all these different components in this interface that are able to give me different information about the analysis. So this is important because when you look at Kotlin, the Swift export, they also have something similar to a KA session called an SIR session. So we're able to extend this to other features. So KA session is something that's really, really important to know. So what I get access to in this action type, in this action block, are symbols and types. Underneath the hood, they're called KA symbols and KA types. I also have the ability to invoke methods that perform resolution. I could get call info, for example. I can also get diagnostic information. So we looked at a very, very simple example, what the analysis API is and how it's structured. Next thing we're going to look at is go more in deep and look at the symbols and the types.